Welcome to the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. This podcast is designed to provide momentum in our God-given roles of leadership as we partner together to equip today's Christian leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. Whether you're a pastor, youth leader, ministry volunteer, parent, or student, we want to be your go-to and most trusted resource for equipping and encouragement when it comes to your ministry and leadership influence. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
What's up, friends? Welcome to another Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. Welcome back if you're returning, and welcome if this is your first time listening. We are glad that you're here, regardless of how you're streaming this content. If you're joining us on YouTube, we thank you for tuning in. If you're listening to the audio content, we're so glad that you're here. We're talking today about navigating sexuality and ministry. So just real light conversation for today. Grab your cup of coffee and join us as we dive into talking about ministry. We've got Ian Shire here from Authentic Intimacy. Ian is new to the team there at AI. And just for sake of clarity, when we talk about AI today, we're not talking about artificial intelligence. We're talking about Authentic Intimacy, which is a ministry that we love, that partners with Momentum for several years now. And we have just been blessed to be partnering with you guys and with all the things that Authentic Intimacy is doing. Julie Slattery has been on several of our episodes. You can check out the Java with Julie podcast, which we highly recommend as well. But Ian is here. And Ian, you are the Authentic Intimacy leader, program manager. You've been on the front line serving in the area of sexual discipleship. You've been a pastor at a church for a long time, and you're kind of stepping into this role. I understand 2023, you kind of came onto the team. Tell us a little bit about that transition and say hello.
Well, hello, everyone. It's so good to be here. And Eric, thanks, brother, for letting me on the podcast. This is exciting. And yes, I am one of the newer members. Our team's grown quite a bit in the last year or so, but I previously had pastored for about 13 years as a care pastor and was really engaged with the ministry of Authentic Intimacy. And at some point, Julie Slattery took notice of that, and she texted. They had just started a leader outreach in 2020, and I was kind of all in, big time, super fan, loved the ministry, and was trying to bring their resources into our church. And Julie eventually would invite me to do what I was doing at my local church for the Big C Church. So we across the globe are involved with churches and trying to help them navigate this conversation on sexuality and to disciple others. And so it has been a wild ride and super fun, and just love our mission.
I love what Authentic Intimacy is doing, and I love that you are now a part of the team. We've geeked out. We've gotten coffee a few times. We're working on some things here that we'll share with our listeners a little later in context of the episode. But it's been really cool just to see how God has developed the team, and honestly, the work that Authentic Intimacy is doing, because it's so needed within the church. Yes. So Ian, tell us a little bit, like how do you describe to people what you do or what Authentic Intimacy is? Like, explain that for our listeners.
Yes. So our mission is to help people make sense of God and sex. And in what we were finding is that over the course of the ministry, when Dr. Slattery would do these events, she would often discover that as much as the church needed to hear these conversations, the leaders really needed to navigate it. And they were struggling with how to get underneath, like, what do I do with these really tough questions? You know, I want to share just a little bit of statistics to kind of give a landscape, and then just kind of share with you what our big ministry model is, which is called sexual discipleship. So some of these statistics, maybe you won't be surprised to hear in the culture and in the church, but there's something like 78% of men and 40% of women are regularly viewing pornography. 62% of Christians, according to Barna, this past September, they released a new study that says 62% of Christians now believe that viewing porn, you can view porn and have a healthy sex life. Nearly 30% of Gen Z are identifying as some alternative gender identity. There's a growing number of people in America right now that's about 5% of Americans are living in a consensual polyamorous relationship. And so there's all kinds of staggering numbers around sexual brokenness and confusion in our country and in the church. And so a lot of times we see churches just kind of having an event or a teaching series on sexuality, but then not talking about it or engaging on it beyond that for maybe a few months or years or whatever. But that's kind of putting a Band-Aid on the gaping wound, because people are asking tougher questions these days. Like, they're not just saying, like, I have a porn problem, can you help me? They're saying, why won't God let people love who they want to love? Or where was God when I was being sexually abused? Or why won't God take away my struggle? Like, these aren't questions that can just be satisfied in a few teachings or a one-off seminar, right? These need to be walked out with other followers of Jesus. And that's really what we refer to as sexual discipleship. It's not a novel concept. It's just acknowledging that Jesus' Great Commission applies also to our sexuality. It's an effort to follow him with our God-given sexuality. And it's best when we do that together. So that's what we try and help churches the most with, and leaders, is to equip them to figure out how to walk that out in their own ministries.
Yeah, that's so good and so needed. As you were sharing just some of those stats, I mean, honestly, I don't know how you listen to those and aren't heartbroken by what is going on. And the reality is, the sad reality is that maybe for some of us that are pastors, that are ministry professionals, as you're listening to this, you might, if you're honest with yourself, you might be sitting there going, that's me. I'm wrestling with some of these things. I'm struggling with pornography, and I don't know where to go with that. I don't know what to do with those things. And so there's help that's available to you. We would highly encourage you to reach out to Momentum, to Authentic Intimacy. Both Ian and I know would love to walk people through that path and just find healing and restoration, and then begin to make use of these resources that are readily available. So Ian, I love your story. I love how God has led you even to this role. So why don't you share just with our listeners briefly, like, how were you making use of AI's resources within your local church as a care pastor, in leveraging those resources towards helping people walk this path? Share with us.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I was for a while kind of the lone wolf in my church. I was the one who was so excited and passionate about this conversation. And if I could back up to share the reason for that, really my backdrop is, I was at 10 years old. That's when I first discovered pornography. And that would follow me into high school and into college and marriage and even on into ministry. Like, I often would kind of walk around with that low grade fever of shame, and really had a hard time. Like, I compartmentalized God. Like, I had a hard time accepting his love for me, and the shame was just so immense. And so it was really around 2012 when this fun little podcast came to be called Java with Julie. And I was so captivated by this podcast because there were just different questions being asked, different conversations than I had heard before or was asking about in my own journey. So questions like, what is God's purpose for sexuality? Or what does intimacy with God look like? Why did he make us sexual? I mean, these kind of like bigger questions. And I was really beginning to kind of finally deal with the issues that were happening in my own heart and my own walk with the Lord. I mean, I was doing the counseling, I was open with people and pastors and everything, but I kind of felt like hitting my head up against the wall half the time. I couldn't break free. So these bigger questions and really looking at what is God's lens of all this started my own healing journey. And that's kind of where the passion started to come from. God started to send me other brothers and sisters that my wife and I would be walking with together and journeying. I mean, so many different sexual issues and brokenness. I felt so ill-equipped to deal with it. And so I was leaning a lot on Authentic Intimacy. There were some other ministries that were very helpful in that season, but Authentic Intimacy, I found that the books and the resources were really just equipping me as a pastor in remarkable ways. So that I started to we started small. We did like small group studies around rethinking sexuality, Julie's book, God, Sex, and Your Marriage. We utilized some of the e-courses. We were sending leaders to some trainings and different things. And over the course of time, and I would say this journey for our church family kind of started around 6 or 7 years ago. So it's taken some time, but now we have more kind of champions on the staff at my local church who are overseeing this effort. They're praying for it. They're thinking it clear, like, how do we integrate this into the fabric of the ministry as a whole, rather than these kind of little one-off silos that we can get into that we were doing. And so it's so nice to not be the lone wolf anymore, to be able to have other champions and others that really see the value of walking this out. And I just want to share that, once we started seeing transformation of people in our own congregation, that's when things kind of really it's like one thing to kind of assent to, yes, this is a conversation we need to be having. The culture's having it. This is important. But when you start to see Jesus changing hearts, I mean, then you start to say, hold on a second, this is something we need to really pray through and prioritize and figure out how we can impact the entire church body.
Wow. Bro, thank you for sharing that, because I appreciate not only your vulnerability, but kind of giving a roadmap for how churches can make use of this. So recently this season, Ian, you probably know this, I think I told you this, but earlier in season 4, Momentum Ministry Partners podcast, we interviewed Noah Filipiak, and he did several podcasts now with Julie on Java with Julie. And that's actually how I learned of him, was from a Java with Julie episode that you guys did. And so we did a whole episode on pastors and pornography. And so if you are in that category where you're struggling with that, man, go check out that episode as well. Get some of those resources. But Ian, what would you recommend, like for churches, maybe pastors, ministry leaders, as you're looking at this, as you're maybe trying to figure out how do we engage with our church? What are some of these resources? Where would you start? I mean, personally, I've already mentioned Java with Julie is a great start. You just mentioned Rethinking Sexuality. Love that book. That was probably the first one that I read. God, Sex, in Your Marriage. I know you guys did a workbook and a awesome series around that. But like, you guys have so many things. Where should people dive in and begin?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we hear that all the time. It is amazing how many resources there are out there, not just in our ministry, but in so much available now, which is awesome. So I think that where we started to see in our own church and what I'm seeing in other churches is that if you can start small and try and have 1 or 2 people that you are discipling, that you are coming alongside, asking those, good, gentle, but challenging questions. Yeah. That's where I think where it can begin. If you can then move out to maybe leading a small group study where for me, when I would attend all the things, like I said before, like I'd go to the seminars and the conferences and I was just drinking in all this great information, but it wasn't until I had to start leading it myself and was kind of entrusted with teaching on sexuality. That's when I really did the deep dives. So I think, and especially when it comes to caring for someone else, like when you're journeying with someone else, that's just sacred ground. And so it really helps kind of navigate just naturally some of the conversation and the questions. And and then look for other outlets in the church family. So we have lots of resources, obviously, that can be tailored and customized to fit the needs of the ministry. Whatever, we have e-courses that we design that churches can walk through with their staff teams or leader teams or lay leaders. We have cohorts that are online communities that we can do at your church or we can do online in our leader community. Like there's options for as far as the equipping piece. But the next phase is really thinking through, okay, how do I do this in my own church? Like where can I either teach or disciple, serve, invite people into my life, like these kind of things. Like I think the more the Lord gives us opportunities to teach and lead and share with other people, the better. And so we have tons in our ministry. That's really, when we design our resources, that's what we have in mind. We want to promote discipleship. We want to promote being in each other's lives. And so our resources are designed for that.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I love that. I love the thought of like, as you learn to give that away and as you invest, disciple in others, that's really where the rubber meets the road for a lot of people. So Ian, in that context, you've used the word discipleship now a few times. I know that sexual discipleship is a phrase that you guys use a lot. kind of explain that? How do you maybe differentiate talking about sexual discipleship from purity and even just sex within the church confines?
Yeah, so the church, there's a lot of different ways that the church can kind of respond to the issue of sexuality. Like we can have the silence approach, right, where we just let's not talk about it. It's okay. It's better left alone. We can have the educational model where it's like let's just create a lot of classes and let people attend things. We can have the problem solving approach where some issue arises in the congregation. There's kind of a need, and so there's a group that's created to meet the need. And, the issue with that is you kind of are communicating that sexuality is a problem. Number one, it's an issue primarily, and that it's only for a subset of people in your congregation. And what sexual discipleship, kind of the distinctive that it is really it's saying that our sexuality, first of all, it's not just for the married people, right? This is not just about intercourse. Our sexuality involves personhood. It involves being made in the image of God as men and women, and how that plays out in our relationships, how we are designed in our bodies and how we connect with each other, but that we were made for intimacy, that our sexuality is so much bigger than just maybe how we're commonly used to thinking about it or approaching it. It's not an issue to solve. We say it's a territory to reclaim, right? We want to reclaim what God has made and allow people to walk that out toward his idea of wholeness. So sexual discipleship is really just a way to kind of look not just at the problem or the sin or the brokenness, which we need to address, but also look at what is wholeness, like what is God's real purpose for sexuality. And I think for me, what really blew this up in my mind was thinking about that our sexuality is a physical thing that's created to reveal a spiritual truth. Like the Lord designed it to reflect himself, to reveal himself in it and through it, in the nature of his covenant love. And so that is a different paradigm. When I was struggling with my own stuff, I was so insulated and thinking just about myself. And I just didn't really conceive of how God could be related at all with what I was experiencing. And so sexual discipleship is really an effort to show kind of the bigger picture of what the Lord has designed sex and sexuality for, and trying to figure out how to strive toward that purpose and work it out together. So again, it's not about being an expert. It's not about it's certainly not about being quiet on the issue, but it's about just walking alongside each other meaningfully and being able to walk towards wholeness together.
That's such a big deal. And honestly, I love what the training that you guys give. We've used AI, even some of those resources that you're talking about, and helping come alongside of local church pastors. Momentum does ministry professional cohorts for senior pastors and student ministry leaders. And so in that context, we heard from Julie even one time about that very thing, that mindset of like, oftentimes the issue that comes up when somebody asks a very tense, tough question revolving around something sexual, gender, or a question, there's a deeper spiritual issue that's going on that you might not actually know about. And so if you answer just the question that's up here at the surface level, there's probably something deeper going on inside of them. And if you can help understand that and get to the root of the issue of why they're asking that question, then you can really be able to move forward and allow God to work in their life and to see healing. And so I love that. I just want to highlight all of that, of what you're saying. Like, that's real. That's very important. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, so that's a huge element, what you just shared about seeing the spiritual issue that is underneath every sexual issue. That's a primary distinctive of sexual discipleship. Also, again, it's showing God's heart. It's revealing sexuality to see his heart. I think that's the most powerful. We call it the biblical narrative of sexuality. Like, we all have a narrative of sexuality, whether we realize it or not. We're all living according to that narrative. And so the biblical narrative, what we see in scripture from Genesis to Revelation, really has to do more with who God is and what his heart is like and what he wants for his people. And so, yeah, it's just so beautiful. The other element is really thinking again, like I said, like how do you walk this out in your own life? What is the journey toward integrity like? And what I love is that word journey, that it is not arrival, right? It's not that we finally make it. We've done all the things and here we are. It's not that. This is an ongoing journey that we're surrendering ourselves to the Lord. We're pursuing him and his design and his purpose for sexuality. And we're doing that with his Holy Spirit. Like, we're not alone. And we also have his church that he's provided. So again, this kind of is all of it together is kind of what we comprise of sexual discipleship. Like, this is what we want to see emerge in people's lives.
I love that. My wife and I, we read the book God, Sex, in Your Marriage, that one of Julie's newer books that came out. We actually did a version of, I think, what you guys would call a online Bible study or a cohort together with some other couples as we read that book and discussed it. And honestly, I had my eyes open to so many things going through that journey. And my wife and I had so many good conversations, but a lot of them kind of stemmed from realizing that the churches that we grew up in didn't do this well. They didn't handle this. They didn't talk about it well. And I think for a lot of us, that if you're listening to this and you're maybe late 30s, 40s, early 50s, you kind of grew up in that purity culture where now you're maybe afraid to even talk about it, or you don't know how, and you're worried about getting canceled. You're worried about saying the wrong thing. And so, Ian, would you agree with that? Like, are you seeing churches struggle right now to address sexuality in a healthy way? Or maybe why do you think, maybe that's a given, why do you think so many churches struggle to address sexuality well? What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, such a good question. And yes, we are seeing a lot of it. I think that's really, in some ways, why this ministry was born, is really to help leaders get over some of those obstacles. There are obstacles, and maybe our chief obstacle is that the evil one doesn't want us talking about this. Like, there's always things that are getting in the way, and there's of course other obstacles of like, we're all busy, right? We've got 1,001 things going on in a day in ministry. I think uncertainty, there's that sense of like, where do we go with this? How do we begin? There was a church that we just did a conference for not too long ago that they admitted in such a sweet way. They said, we didn't do this right. Like, we came out the gate and we started talking about transgenderism in a really strange, we were too dogmatic. And so they shifted gears. So that uncertainty that they had, they're like, ooh, we messed up. This isn't good. Caused them to really kind of shift to say, okay, how do we be more strategic and think this clear? And so that's another obstacle, is just, what does this look like in our church? How do we make it happen? And then, another obstacle is like what you mentioned, is just, I don't feel equipped. Like, if we open this conversation, what's going to walk into my office door? Like, what if I say the wrong thing? And like you made an apt point, like, I don't want to get canceled. I don't want, let's just be honest, like, maybe the budget to be affected. Like, there's things that can really intimidate us and open this conversation. But yeah, and it's all in some sense valid, and just, that's real. But if, again, just looking at the statistics, and as I've journeyed with some in my own church family, like, for a lot of people, this is front and center in their lives. These are the real questions that they have, and the real reasons that they're, wondering about, is God really who he says he is? Like, sure, I know what he says about sexuality, but is he right to say it? I mean, those are the kind of things that Christians are asking. And so as pastors and leaders, like, we have to be able to be nuanced and be able to kind of think these things clear and really move toward the conversation, not away. I think when we move away, we're communicating that God is moving away. Like, he's not interested. This is too much for him to handle. And so I think the first, real way to kind of lean into this is really just by, inviting people, being transparent, like inviting people into your own life. Like, one of the things for me that was a huge obstacle was just being real. Like, I didn't want people to know who I was. Like, I'm their pastor. I don't want you to know me. I mean, I do, but I don't, because I've got these things in my life. And so I think just learning how to be relationally intimate with the people that God's entrusted to you is a starting point. It's building that culture of transparency. I think that really overcomes a lot of the obstacles that we're facing, that we are We are just real with people. We're not afraid of their struggles. We're not afraid of their pain. We want to talk about the deeper, harder struggles and things that they're wrestling with. And so I think if we realize that our churches are made up of people where this is so much in the forefront, we can begin to say, okay, it's not just about, valuing this topic, or we're not just responding to the cultural trend. Like, these are things that can help people see the Lord for who he is. Like, it can remove, when Jesus says, I've come to set captives free. I mean, my goodness, this is such an incredible avenue to seeing that firsthand, as people's addictions and shame and frustrations sexually just being, transformed by Christ. And it's just a beautiful thing that we get a
Ian,
part of.
can you go a little deeper there? Because I think sometimes, if I'm hearing you right, what you're explaining is like there are areas that we miss or that we're afraid to address well in this. And so to that end, what are maybe some of the gaps or blind spots, if you will, that we often miss when we're trying to talk about sex or relationships? I think even in my time as a youth pastor, I'm like, we're going to talk about pornography, but because we swung the pendulum to that end, maybe we missed talking about relationships, right? We missed talking about how do you be friends with people, or we missed talking about dating. Or give some examples. What are maybe common things that you see that are blind spots or gaps in talking about these things?
So one blind spot, if I can say it right, that I notice is when we talk about sexuality, we talk about it typically from the lens of sin and brokenness. And so it can be this thing we have to gear up for, embrace ourselves. It's going to be so intense. This is kind of a negative thing, but we have to talk about it. Like, that mindset can kind of communicate things that aren't we don't need to. So when you look at scripture, like, you don't really see a picture of, I mean, certainly we see lots of examples of sexual sin and immorality, like lots of, Abraham and Hagar, Lot and his daughters. I mean, that was a crazy story. David and Bathsheba. There's so many examples, right? So it makes sense that we kind of come at it in that same way. And then we have our own lives, right? Our own experiences that can be riddled with pain and struggle. And so totally understand why sexuality can often take on this somber, depressing kind of tone. However, when you look at like Genesis and you see Adam and Eve and the beauty of their oneness that's expressed, as you look at Genesis 1 and 2, and you look at the Song of Solomon, and how the love and the delight and the cherishing of this young couple that's just infatuated with one another, and it's a picture of God and his church. It's amazing. And then you look at Ephesians 5, how Paul talks about our marriage as being a picture of the kind of care and compassion that Jesus has for us. I mean, there is a lot of beauty and wonder and excitement in talking about sexuality. And I think as we start to really look at sexuality not as some issue or problem all the time, although we got to deal with the sin, right? We got to deal with the issues that are there. But we also are talking about the purpose, the wholeness, where God is in all of it, his heart. And I think that's where we start to really, have a little bit a better approach.
Oh, Ian, thank you for sharing that. Man, that's really helpful, because I think you're right. We do get lost, maybe as pastors, as ministry leaders, even as parents. We want to guard and protect. We want to, help in any way we can to overcome the negatives. And yet, I think you're right. So many times we aren't talking about the positives. And we all know, like, there's, those pastors or the churches that they talk about my smoking hot wife and all the amazing sex that they're having. And I'm like, I don't know that that's really helpful either. So there is a fine line there, and there is a balance there. But that's one of the things that I've come to really appreciate about Authentic Intimacy is you guys are helping churches to walk that line and do it in a really beautiful way. So, Ian, to that end, give us just what's one way that you love about your job that you get to kind of help serve, support the local church, and walk alongside of them in this journey?
Oh, there's a lot of things that come to mind. First of all, brother, I'm so thankful for just being able to work alongside you and just momentum and just the work you're doing and how you're equipping leaders. That's huge. So I'm just thankful for that, and that's a part of what I love about my job now is get to meet guys like Eric Miller, and so I think another thing too. Honestly, one of my favorite aspects of my job is we have online cohorts, and these are just communities where leaders can come. And a lot of times what we hear is like leaders are not too sure. They're like, well, I'm not sure what this is going to all be about. I'm sure it's going to be fine. But then by the end, they're like, oh my goodness, like I was able to ask the kind of questions that I'm not able to ask at my own church, or I don't feel that way. I'm able to, share honestly what's going on in my life. And then we work through our content meaningfully. So it's just this beautifully rich, it's kind of giving leaders a picture of what we're hoping to see them do in their own ministries. Like one of my struggles as a pastor, again, is that I just never felt I could share honestly. I never felt I could be really kind of intimate relationally with anyone on staff. And I mean, I was like, but I was always there was always that little piece that I was kind of guarded. And so these cohorts, I think, are opportunities for leaders to really engage meaningfully and to see that being vulnerable and transparent and working through real challenging content is a net positive. Like it's a good experience, and it's what a lot of times they immediately, like they're very practically oriented. So a lot of times they want to bring that back into their own ministries, and so that's I love that part of things. Boy, there's a lot. We do trainings. I love that. I love just the face-to-face interaction, seeing how this plays out into the greater fabric of churches and what they're hoping to see happen. And so there's a lot that comes to mind, but those are some of the primaries that I just really love.
It's been fun just honestly getting to work with you in this role that you're in, because to that end, as we're partnering together, one of the things that I realized is at Momentum Youth Conference, a lot of our youth pastors, a lot of our youth workers, they're kind of wrestling with these things that might get surfaced when God's moving and working and there's conviction of sin. And, the students are at Momentum Youth Conference and they're like, I need to process this. I want to share. Maybe for some, for the first time, they're bringing these things to the surface. And what we're finding is their adult leaders are like, I'm not equipped to deal with this. I don't know how to answer that. And so for us to be proactive this year, we're doing something we've never done before. So we're teaming up with Authentic Intimacy. Ian, we've already done one of these trainings. There's about 100 churches who come to Momentum Youth Conference. And so it's a free resource that we're giving where Ian is hopping on a Zoom call with all of our youth pastors, with all of the leaders, with all the adult contacts, the volunteers who are there. And we're just kind of walking through some of this exact stuff. But the training that you're giving is so valuable because you're helping those leaders think through not when, but if, or not if, but when these things come up, here's how to handle them. Here's how to get deeper into the heart of the issue. Here's how to have a biblical framework around it. So if you're one of the churches coming to Momentum Youth Conference this year, we love that. Please take advantage of that. If you're not, and you'd like to be a part of that, please reach out to us, info@buildmomentum.org. We'll get you the contact. We'll get you the training. We'll give you those resources because it's so valuable. And so, Ian, I can see why you would love getting to do a little bit of that, and all the cohorts and things that you get to be a part of helping that just make sense to people. So to that end, we're talking even on that level youth conference. Statistically, we're seeing a lot of this. We should be talking about these things in our children's ministry, because you've got students now that are elementary school. They're hearing words get thrown around at school. Maybe they don't know what it is. Like you even said, as a pastor, they're as students afraid to like, I don't know what that means. And so rather than asking mom or dad or a friend, what do? They're going to the internet and they're looking it up. And maybe they don't like to read, so they're going Google image. And now you're finding things that you probably shouldn't be seeing. Or so how do you, thinking through like Authentic Intimacy, all the resources you guys have, help us on maybe multiple levels within the church. How do leaders best navigate these conversations in both a biblical and a culturally relevant way in today's world?
Mm-hmm.
Give us maybe something for like children, youth, and adults.
Sure. Yeah, so good. So it really can't be understated how important identity has become and is. I think it's Carl Trueman who said in his book Strange New World, like years ago, sexuality was thought of something that people did, and now it's something who people are. Right? And so especially as our children and our youth are, growing up, like they are asking those kind of questions by default, but now they're asking deeper, harder questions of like, why I went to school and my teacher is presenting as a woman, but I think he's a man and I don't understand. And so how do we as parents, you're absolutely right. Like we don't want to default to Google. We don't want someone else or TV shows or whatever to raise our kids in this. And so we want, again, to be proactive. I love, there's the Stone Streets, John Stone Street and Sarah Stone Street are a part of Colson Ministries. And I love this illustration. They said their kids, I don't know if you remember when the latest Buzz Lightyear movie came out, and there was that kind of infamous like lesbian kiss scene that was kind of all the rage at the time. And they took their kids to the movie, and when they left the movie, they talked about the kiss scene. Like they brought it up. They pointed it out. They wanted to be sure that their kids were able to like process, okay, the cultural worldview and cultural values and the biblical worldview. Like it's so good to, again, be proactive and I know how challenging that is. I've got kids myself. Eric, you have your kiddos. We were just talking before we started, just the challenges there, the questions that they have. It's challenging. But I think looking at addressing things like identity, what is it like? What are the core elements of who you are? What does God say about who a human is? And just really starting to build in. And then when you start to think about sexual identity, boy, there is such pressure for kids today to identify as something. Like I mentioned that stat, that stat that I mentioned is 30% of Gen Z are now identifying as some other gender. 20 years ago, that was under 5%. So there's just been a huge increase. And so there are lots of resources. There's a ministry that we work with called walkwiththem.com that Kelly Urban is the lead in that ministry. It's a wonderful, very practical, great resources. Axis.org is another wonderful resource that just helps equip parents to shepherd their kiddos in sexuality. And we certainly have a lot. But I think, identity. The other question that comes up from youth ministries and teens a lot is kind of on like temptation, how far is too far, like navigating those kind of like the difference between behavior, focusing in on behavior and wholeness and like pursuing our identities in Christ. And so, there's so many resources. And then with adult ministries, boy, there's a lot available. I think, just navigating, we just have a lot of resources in sexual discipleship that can really help them walk some of that out. But it's definitely challenging for sure.
Yeah. Ian, thank you for sharing that with us. I love what you guys are doing, and I think it's so meaningful because the reality is we live in a fallen world. Our culture, the world around us is trying to disciple us. And I'm guaranteeing you it is not in biblical ways. And it is very contradictory to the ways of Scripture, to God's design, to biblical intent. And so it's imperative that at any level, at any aspect of your ministry, you're mindful of these things, you're thinking about it. It can be very overwhelming at times. So Ian, just kind of wrapping up, if you've got a pastor, a leader, a parent, maybe that's feeling discouraged about some of this and they're just getting beat up. We've said before here on the Momentum podcast, like culture is waterboarding our students, and it is tough. It feels like sink or swim sometimes. So what encouragement would you give just as a pastor, a parent, a leader, to those who maybe feel unequipped or overwhelmed by the complexities of all of this?
Yes. I think the best mindset is to just have that mindset of lean in. You know, ask people questions, get into their lives. I just see that as so important. Whether and this work is not about being an expert. I am not an expert. Julie says that she's not an expert, although I don't believe her. I think she is an expert. She says she's still learning. I'm like, no, you're an expert. But
She's good, yeah.
but yeah, it's not about having all the answers. A lot of times it's amazing how far genuine care goes in people's lives, just showing genuine value, not being intimidated by someone and their struggle. I think that's just incredible. So, but lean in. I have this just friend who I met through this ministry. He's a senior pastor in Missouri. And he had a very zealous couple. They had, in his church family, they had just gone through infidelity. And about 3 years in, they began to see just restoration like you wouldn't believe. And so they brought their excitement and their own journeys to this senior pastor. And this church has they're not talking about sexuality. And he just trusted, he just saw some of the change in their hearts and what it did in their life. And he joined a cohort of ours. He joined another cohort. We're coming to their church for a training. Things are happening now that it was just started so small, but he just saw what Jesus can do in a single couple. And it moved him to say, you know what, we got to figure this out for ourselves. I think that's so much the battle. This is following God through prayer and through his Spirit. This is not we don't have a formula, necessarily. We don't prescribe or diagnose. We just follow the Lord Jesus. This is something he has designed for his good purposes. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And it can really transform your ministry, your own life. We need this to cut us too, as pastors and leaders. We can't just learn the facts and regurgitate them. We have to let this nestle into us deeply so that we can begin to really provide that type of compassion we see in Jesus. He sees the crowds coming and he has this guttural compassion that moves him towards people that are suffering. And so we do need that. And so in some ways, I think I don't want to sound, harsh at all, but just, we maybe need to set aside the overwhelmingness, set aside the, how this might make us look or make people think about it. Just lean in, go for it. Trust the Lord. This isn't important for your church family and for your ministry. And he's going to do great things as you follow him through this.
Man, thank you. That's so good. I think even to that end, as pastors, as leaders, as we walk with people through this, if our hearts aren't burdened for helping them, for learning more about how to navigate or how to walk alongside this with them, we need our hearts broken for that stuff again. And so a lot of that is just getting on your knees and praying and asking God to help you. I actually have on the inset of my Bible an inscription that just says, if you want to be a leader, you've got to be a reader. And while I think most of that replies or is in the context of Scripture, to this end, because some of this stuff is so hard and challenging and discouraging and difficult, Ian, I've learned that being a leader often means I need to be a reader. I need to research. And so Julie's book, Rethinking Sexuality, is a phenomenal place to start. I cannot recommend that book enough. Just do yourself a favor. Go over to Amazon, get it right now. Sean McDowell's Chasing Love. I think every teenager should read that book. Noah Filipiak, I already talked about him. He has a new book out called Needed Navigation. If you're in middle school and trying to figure out your struggle with porn, honestly, even high school or college, go get that one. There's just so many resources out there. But honestly, brother, to that end, man, thank you for what you're doing. And you guys are making a huge impact. And so I couldn't highly recommend these resources enough. So Ian, where can our listeners find you? How do they connect with you guys? Give them the website, all that one more time.
Awesome. Yes, you can find us at authenticintimacy.com/leader, or you can reach out to me directly at our team at leader@authenticintimacy.com. And brother, I just want to highlight just a few more resources because so good. So Julie does have a new book coming out in July. It's called Surrendered Sexuality, How Knowing Jesus Changes Everything. And this is designed to be a discipleship resource that anybody in your church family can walk alongside someone else. The application exercises are phenomenal. The scriptural exercises, I just love them all. And so, that's July. We had piloted it, and now we're ready to launch it. She published it through Moody, so we're so excited for that. There's a couple other books too. Jonathan Holmes has a book called Grounded in Grace, and we are actually hosting a webinar with Jonathan Holmes called How to Navigate Tough Sexual Issues for Leaders. And so we'd love to see you there for that. But brother, I can't thank you enough for your ministry and what you're doing at Momentum. This is so important for the church and for our youth leaders. And so really grateful for you.
Oh, thank you, Ian. I'm glad you mentioned Julie's new book coming out. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to mention that or when that was coming out. So thank you for doing that too. Well, Ian, it's been a pleasure just to have this conversation. And we really do hope and pray that this is beneficial to you. And so if you're a pastor, a ministry leader, and you're struggling with these things, please, please, please go check out these resources. I guarantee you will be encouraged. You will find something that will benefit not only you and your relationship with God or your spouse, but honestly in your ministry and having kingdom impact. And so it's just an honor and privilege, Ian, to get to partner with you guys. Thanks so much for being a part of this conversation. To our listeners, we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope you found it to be valuable. And if you did, would you share it with someone else in your network who might enjoy it? Also, would you please go on and subscribe, rate, and review it? That way you don't miss any more and somebody else will be able to find it too. Also, because we want to be your trusted resource, if you have a question or topic that you would like us to discuss on an upcoming episode, send that to us via email to info@buildmomentum.org, or you can send us a DM on any of our social media platforms. You can find us there at Momentum Ministry Partners. Also, if you need more information on our ministry, be sure to check out our website at buildmomentum.org. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time.